Welcome back to Family Secrets Unveiled, where we delve into the shadows of lives seemingly ordinary, only to uncover truths that shatter every preconceived notion. Today, we unravel a tapestry woven with deceit, a story so profoundly heartbreaking it will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and the people we share our lives with. Imagine a life meticulously constructed, brick by carefully placed brick, over decades. A life filled with shared laughter, quiet comfort, and the undeniable weight of shared history. Now, imagine that entire edifice collapsing in a single, brutal moment, not with a sudden earthquake, but with the quiet rustle of newsprint. That, my friends, is where our story begins, with a woman named Eleanor Vance, whose world, as she knew it, ceased to exist on a Tuesday morning. Eleanor was, by all accounts, the epitome of grace and resilience. At 58, her silver hair framed a face etched with the gentle lines of a life well lived, but also with an unmistakable spark of enduring youthfulness. Her hands, though bearing the faint marks of years spent gardening and caring, still moved with an elegant precision, a testament to her past as a talented seamstress. She had met William Vance almost 35 years ago at a community dance, a chance encounter that bloomed into a love story people whispered about with a certain wistful admiration. William, a man of quiet strength and a captivating, understated charm, was a respected architect, his designs gracing many of the homes in their quaint New England town. Their life together was a picture of domestic bliss, Sunday morning pancakes, evening strolls along the river, and the comforting rhythm of two souls perfectly in sync. Their home, a charming colonial with a sprawling garden, was a testament to their shared dreams and enduring partnership. Their two children, now grown and successful, were the living embodiment of their love, their lives rich with the values William and Eleanor had painstakingly instilled. Then came the phone call. The call that every spouse dreads. William, on a business trip to a neighboring state, had suffered a massive heart attack. The doctors had done everything they could, but it was swift, merciless. Eleanor's world tilted on its axis, the vibrant colors of her life draining into a monochrome haze of grief. The following days were a blur of condolences, funeral arrangements, and the numbing ache of loss. Her children, Sarah and Michael, were her pillars, their young faces mirroring her own profound sorrow. They gathered around her, a tight-knit unit, united in their shared grief for a man they all adored. The funeral was a somber affair, filled with tears and heartfelt eulogies. Friends, colleagues, and family spoke of William's integrity, his kindness, his unwavering dedication. Eleanor listened, a fragile smile gracing her lips, finding a strange comfort in their words, in the collective affirmation of the wonderful man she had called her husband. She truly believed she had known every facet of William Vance, every secret, every dream. It was a week after the funeral, when the initial wave of shock had begun to recede, leaving behind a raw, tender wound. Eleanor was sitting in her sun-drenched living room, attempting to find some solace in sorting through the stacks of condolence cards. Sarah, her eldest, was meticulously going through William's personal effects, a task both painful and necessary. Michael was out, handling some legal matters. The house, usually bustling with the quiet hum of family life, felt eerily silent, amplifying the emptiness William's absence had created. Sarah, her brow furrowed in concentration, came across a local newspaper, neatly folded, tucked beneath a pile of William's work journals. "Mom," she said, her voice unusually strained, "did Dad have a subscription to the Springfield Tribune?" Eleanor frowned. "No, honey. We always got the Sentinel." "Why?" Sarah unfolded the newspaper, her eyes wide with an emotion Eleanor couldn't quite decipher, a mixture of confusion, shock, and something akin to disbelief. "Because," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, "his obituary is in here." Eleanor felt a cold dread seep into her bones. William's obituary had been prominently featured in their local paper, the one they always read. Why would he have another one in a paper from a different town? A town he only visited for work? Sarah extended the newspaper, her finger trembling slightly, pointing to a small, unassuming article on page B7. Eleanor's eyes scanned the words, her breath catching in her throat. The name was undeniably William Vance. The birth date, the death date, even the brief mention of his architectural firm, it all matched. But then, her gaze snagged on a single line, a line that ripped the fabric of her reality into shreds. Survived by his loving wife, Margaret Vance. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Margaret Vance. Who was Margaret Vance? Eleanor's mind reeled, trying to process the impossible. It had to be a mistake, a cruel typo, a clerical error of the most heinous kind. But as she reread the line, her heart began to pound with a frantic, sickening rhythm. The details were too specific, too personal. It wasn't just a name. It was a life, a connection, a bond. And it wasn't hers. The image of William, her William, the man she had loved and trusted implicitly for over 3 decades, began to morph, twisting into a grotesque caricature of someone she no longer recognized. The warmth of their shared memories suddenly felt tainted, coated in a chilling layer of deception. She looked at Sarah, her daughter's face a mirror of her own dawning horror. This wasn't just an error. This was a secret. A profound, unimaginable secret that had been carefully hidden, buried beneath years of apparent happiness, only to burst forth with the force of a tsunami. Her husband's obituary listed another wife. And in that moment, Eleanor Vance realized her entire life had been a meticulously crafted lie. The silence in the room became a living, breathing entity, pressing down on Eleanor and Sarah with an unbearable weight. Eleanor felt a surge of nausea, her stomach churning with a mixture of grief and betrayal. Sarah, she choked out, her voice a fragile whisper, this can't be real. It has to be a mistake. Sarah, equally stunned, slowly shook her head. Mom, it has William's picture. The same picture from the Sentinel. And it lists his company, his age, everything. The undeniable truth of Sarah's words pierced through Eleanor's rapidly crumbling facade of denial. Her husband, the man she had shared her bed, her dreams, her entire life with, had apparently been living a double life. The thought was so grotesque, so fundamentally shattering, that her mind struggled to grasp its full implications. How could this be? How could she have been so blind? The initial shock quickly morphed into a frantic need for answers. They searched through William's belongings with renewed, almost desperate vigor. Every drawer, every file, every forgotten corner of his study was meticulously combed through, not for keepsakes, but for clues. They found nothing. No secret letters, no hidden phone numbers, no cryptic messages. It was as if William had meticulously scrubbed away any trace of this other life, leaving only the gaping wound of the obituary. The lack of evidence was, in its own way, even more damning. It spoke of a calculated deception, a carefully constructed illusion. Eleanor felt a cold rage begin to simmer beneath her grief. The man she mourned was now a stranger, a masterful deceiver. A few days later, Michael, ever the pragmatic one, suggested they go to Springfield. "We need to see for ourselves, Mom," he insisted gently, though his own eyes held a deep, troubled confusion. This is too big to ignore. Eleanor, still reeling, knew he was right. The drive to Springfield felt like an odyssey into an unknown land. The quaint New England towns they passed quickly gave way to the more suburban landscape of Springfield. Each mile brought them closer to a truth she desperately wanted to avoid, yet fiercely needed to confront. They arrived in Springfield, a city Eleanor had only ever passed through on the highway. With the obituary in hand, they located the funeral home listed. The receptionist, a kind-faced woman with tired eyes, confirmed William Vance's funeral had indeed taken place there the previous week. When Eleanor, her voice trembling, inquired about Margaret Vance, the receptionist's brow furrowed. Yes, Mrs. Vance was here for all the arrangements. A lovely woman, very distraught. Eleanor felt the world spin. Mrs. Vance. Not just a name in a newspaper, but a real person. A woman who had mourned William just as she had, perhaps even at the same time. The sheer audacity of it, the cold, calculating cruelty, was breathtaking. Michael, sensing Eleanor's fragile state, took over. He politely pressed for more information, explaining they were extended family who had only just heard. The receptionist, sympathetic, provided them with a copy of the guest book from William's Springfield service. Eleanor's hands shook as she took the book. Her eyes immediately darted to the names, a sea of unfamiliar signatures, but then, there it was, Margaret Vance and family. And beneath it, several other names she didn't recognize, names that were clearly the family of this other life. Sarah, looking over her shoulder, pointed to an address listed next to Margaret's name. It was in a quiet residential neighborhood, only a few miles from the funeral home. The journey to the address was agonizing. Each turn of the wheel felt like a step deeper into a nightmare. As they pulled onto a tree-lined street, a charming two-story house came into view. A well-tended garden, a swing set in the backyard, even a dog barking from behind a white picket fence. It was a scene of idyllic domesticity. A scene so eerily similar to her own. Eleanor felt a cold wave of recognition, then a fresh surge of pain. This wasn't some fleeting affair, some momentary lapse in judgment. This was another life, another family, painstakingly built and maintained. As they sat in the car, paralyzed by the enormity of what they were witnessing, the front door of the house opened. A woman stepped out, her figure slender, her hair a warm auburn. She was holding the hand of a young boy, perhaps 7 or 8, who skipped ahead of her. Another girl, slightly older, emerged from behind her, holding a school backpack. Margaret. This was Margaret. And those were William's children. Her children. The realization hit Eleanor with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. William hadn't just had another wife, he had another family. Another set of children, innocent and unsuspecting, who had also just lost their father. Eleanor felt a primal scream building in her throat, but no sound escaped. Her vision blurred, tears streaming down her face, hot and stinging. The picture of the grieving widow, the devoted mother, shattered into a million pieces. She wasn't just grieving a husband, she was grieving a phantom, a man who had meticulously crafted an elaborate deception for decades. The betrayal was so profound, so absolute, it was almost unfathomable. Sarah and Michael, equally devastated, exchanged horrified glances. Their father, the man they had idolized, was a complete stranger. The man who had taught them honesty and integrity had woven a web of lies so intricate, so deeply ingrained, that it had taken his death to unravel it. The truth, raw and brutal, was finally beginning to reveal itself. And it was far, far worse than anything Eleanor could have ever imagined. The air in the car was thick with unspoken grief and outrage. Eleanor felt a profound sense of disorientation, as if the ground beneath her had vanished. Her world, once so solid and predictable, was now a kaleidoscope of fractured images. She had spent a lifetime building a family, a home, a future, only for it to be revealed as a grand illusion. The pain of William's death was now intertwined with a searing anger, a feeling of being utterly and completely duped. How could he? How could the man she had loved so deeply, the father of her children, have orchestrated such a monumental deception? Michael, his face pale and grim, was the first to break the suffocating silence. "Mom, we can't just leave. We need to confront her. We need to understand." Sarah, tears still tracing paths down her cheeks, nodded vehemently. "She deserves to know, Mom. What kind of person is he? Who is he?" Eleanor, numb with shock, found herself agreeing. There was no going back. The carefully constructed facade of her life had crumbled, and now all that remained was the agonizing truth. She had to know everything. She had to look this other woman, Margaret, in the eye and demand answers. With a heavy heart and trembling hands, Eleanor stepped out of the car, Sarah and Michael flanking her like silent guardians. The short walk to the front door felt like an eternity, each step a testament to the shattered pieces of her existence. As Eleanor raised her hand to knock, the door opened. It was Margaret. Her eyes, still red-rimmed from recent tears, widened in surprise, then narrowed with a flicker of confusion as she took in the trio standing on her doorstep. She was, as Eleanor had observed from a distance, a graceful woman, perhaps in her early 50s, with a gentle sadness lingering about her. "Can I help you?" Margaret asked, her voice soft, tentative. Eleanor found her voice, though it was raspy and unfamiliar. "My name is Eleanor Vance. This is my daughter, Sarah, and my son, Michael." Margaret's eyes, previously questioning, now hardened with a dawning comprehension. The color drained from her face. "Eleanor?" "William's first wife." The casual mention of first wife was a gut punch, a brutal confirmation of the depth of William's deceit. "First wife," Eleanor echoed, her voice rising with a mixture of disbelief and fury. "I am his only wife. We were married for 33 years. The confrontation was explosive, a raw outpouring of decades of suppressed truth. Margaret, initially defensive, quickly crumbled under the weight of Eleanor's grief and the undeniable evidence. They moved into Margaret's living room, a space filled with pictures of William, happy and smiling, surrounded by a different family. Each photograph was a fresh stab to Eleanor's heart, a visceral reminder of the life he had built parallel to hers. Margaret, tearfully, began to recount her story. She had met William 20 years ago at a conference in Springfield. He had been charming, attentive, and seemingly unattached. He had swept her off her feet, proposing after a whirlwind romance. They had married in a small ceremony, a quiet affair with just close friends. She had no idea he was already married. "He told me he was a widower," Margaret sobbed, her voice laced with pain. "He said his wife had died tragically years ago, and he was finally ready to find love again. He was so convincing, so earnest." Eleanor listened, her face a mask of stone, as Margaret described their life together. The births of their children, a boy named David and a girl named Emily, now 15 and 12. The family vacations, the shared dreams, the everyday moments that mirrored Eleanor's own life with William. He was a loving father, a devoted husband. The image of the man Eleanor thought she knew was completely obliterated. He wasn't just a deceiver, he was a master manipulator, capable of maintaining two entirely separate lives, two separate families, with chilling precision. The most shocking revelation came when Margaret, still weeping, confessed to another detail. He would disappear for a week or two at a time, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. "He always said it was for work, important projects out of state. I never questioned it. He was so good at explaining everything, at making me feel secure." Eleanor's mind flashed back to William's frequent business trips, the very trips that had taken him to Springfield and beyond. The pieces of the puzzle, once scattered and incomprehensible, were now fitting together with a horrifying clarity. He wasn't just working, he was commuting between two lives, two wives, two sets of children. He had engineered a schedule of deceit, a meticulously choreographed dance between two separate realities. As Margaret continued, her voice cracking with emotion, she revealed that William had even gone so far as to create separate bank accounts, separate insurance policies, and elaborate cover stories for his absences. He had managed to keep his two lives completely compartmentalized, never allowing one to bleed into the other. The extent of his deception was mind-boggling, a testament to a level of psychological manipulation Eleanor couldn't begin to comprehend. Sarah and Michael, sitting beside their mother, were visibly shaken. Their father, their hero, was a villain, a man who had orchestrated a betrayal so profound it would forever scar their lives. The man they had mourned so deeply was now a monster in their eyes, a cunning and ruthless liar. The comfortable, loving memories of their childhood now felt like a cruel joke, a facade behind which a terrible secret had festered for decades. The truth, when it finally emerged in its full, hideous glory, was not just about another wife, but about an entire life built on a foundation of lies. The hours spent in Margaret's living room felt like a lifetime. Two women, united by the cruel deception of one man, sat across from each other, their initial animosity slowly dissolving into a shared sorrow and a profound, agonizing understanding. Sarah and Michael, though still reeling from the revelations, listened with a maturity beyond their years, their faces etched with a mixture of anger and confusion. Margaret, in her raw honesty, had painted a picture of a William that was both familiar and utterly alien. The attentive husband, the loving father, these were qualities Eleanor recognized, yet they were now stained with the bitter knowledge that they had been bestowed upon another concurrently. The conversation was difficult, punctuated by tears and moments of stunned silence. They pieced together fragments of William's schedule, realizing the intricate web he had spun. His late nights at the office, for Eleanor, were often early dinners with Margaret. His business trips were seamlessly transitioning between two homes, two families, two distinct realities. He had compartmentalized his life with such ruthless efficiency that neither woman had ever suspected. The sheer psychological strain of maintaining such a facade was staggering, leading them to wonder if William himself had been a tormented soul, trapped by his own intricate lies. As the evening wore on, a fragile truce settled between the two families. There were no easy answers, no simple solutions. Their shared grief for the man they had both loved, however flawed and deceitful he had been, bound them in a strange, unwelcome solidarity. They agreed on the difficult path ahead to navigate the complexities of William's estate, to explain this unimaginable truth to their respective children, and to somehow, someday, find a way to heal. The immediate future was a blurry landscape of legalities, emotional turmoil, and the daunting task of redefining their identities in the wake of such a colossal betrayal. Eleanor returned home that night, not to the comforting sanctuary she had known, but to a house that now felt hollow, its walls echoing with the ghost of a lie. The man she had buried a week ago was not the man she thought she knew. The grief was still there, a heavy stone in her heart, but it was now laced with a profound sense of loss for the life she thought she had, for the truth she had so innocently believed. Sarah and Michael, their innocence irrevocably shattered, clung to their mother, a silent promise of support in a world that had suddenly become terrifyingly uncertain. In the days and weeks that followed, the two families began the painstaking process of untangling William's double life. Legal documents, financial records, and hidden compartments in his affairs slowly brought the full extent of his deception into stark relief. There was no grand explanation, no motive beyond a man seemingly unwilling or unable to choose. He had simply built two parallel universes, existing in both, until death brought them crashing together. The children, now aware of their half-siblings, faced their own struggles with identity and the crushing weight of their father's legacy. It was a complex, heartbreaking journey for everyone involved. Eleanor, with time, began to find a fragile strength. She realized that while William's actions had stolen a piece of her past, they would not define her future. Her love for her children, her resilience, and her determination to find peace became her anchors. She eventually forged a tentative, respectful relationship with Margaret, two women forever linked by a shared tragedy and a man whose secrets had bound them together in the most unexpected and painful way. Their bond was not one of friendship, but of a unique understanding, a quiet acknowledgement of the profound impact William's choices had wrought on both their lives. This story, dear viewers, is a stark reminder that even in the most seemingly perfect lives, shadows can lurk, secrets can fester, and the truth, when it finally emerges, can be far more devastating than any fiction. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the painful journey of confronting unimaginable betrayal, and the enduring quest for truth, no matter how agonizing. Eleanor Vance's story is a chilling echo of countless others, a testament to the hidden complexities of human relationships and the profound impact of secrets. We hope this exploration into Eleanor's heartbreaking journey has left you with much to ponder. If you found yourself caught in the grip of this unfolding mystery, please show your support by hitting that like button. Subscribe to Family Secrets Unveiled for more deep dives into the extraordinary hidden truths of ordinary lives, and don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss another episode. Until next time, stay vigilant, stay curious, and always remember, some secrets refuse to stay buried.